attributed to God, perfectly loving, perfectly just, would have created a world like this, right? It seems that there are plenty of improvements that could be made to this world, and such a perfectly good God couldn't have created it.
So you basically have an objection on some of the attributes of God, not necessarily the existence of God. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying due to the attributes of God, it seems unlikely that he exists, because if he did exist, the world wouldn't look like this.
So if you were to use your reason and logic, and you just didn't believe that God had those two attributes, would you come to the conclusion that God exists?
No, because
Then this is irrelevant. The question now is, how do we determine, what was your basis of determination that God indeed does not exist?
well, I don't believe in God that is perfectly loving and just. So
That's your reaction to a particular attribute of God.
Okay, so describe God.
Then I would like to know from you, because you are the ones rejecting God. If I told you, do you believe
in a particular path, that's
we exist? We, what is we? Like us?
You and I.
I do believe, yes.
Okay. So we are something that exists.
Yes.
Can you conceptually, at least for the sake of argument, understand the opposite, which is not something?
Yeah,
Something?
yeah.
If we exist now as something, would there have been a time when there was absolute nothingness?
Probably, yeah.
What is absolute nothingness as opposed to something? Remember I said the opposite.
When there's not something.
And which is the absence of everything.
Yeah.
So how can the absence of everything bring about something? We weren't sharing your reasoning?
Well, there's a scientific proof in quantum physics called M theory that currently are working on that could lend us a reason to believe in that. But the issue here is, okay,
Tell me
certainly.
more about this M theory. How, from the M theory, non-existence can bring about existence.
Well, we're still working on it, I suppose.
So if you're going to work on something that you don't know about it, so that is like the science of the gaps theory, where science will explain eventually. This is one aspect of science, which is the M theory. So just like some people bring the God of the gaps, you are doing the classical science of the gaps.
But I'm not saying it's necessarily a strong theory. I'm just saying there are other options. But I certainly think
What are the data to support a sound reasoning that something can come out of non-existence? Existence can arise from non-existence.
I would say we don't have enough reason to know. Like we don't know right now.
So we don't have anything. So basically, this is just a blind faith.
Maybe, yeah. I think.
Right. So let's leave out blind faith. Let's leave out blind faith, and let's use our reason, faculty of intellect, to see whether we can understand this question that you're asking. So non-existence is the absence of any existence. It doesn't have any space, time, matter, quantum fluctuations. It doesn't have potentialities. It doesn't have gravitational fields or physics. So when we describe nothingness with that kind of understanding, how can something come out of this non-existence when it doesn't have the possibility or the potentiality to bring about existence?
Well, can I say I don't know? Like, is that an honest answer? Because I don't know.
No, it's not knowing. If you affirm, if you affirm that non-existent doesn't even have the possibility and the potentiality to bring about existence, the answer is it never will.
I see. So
that's the definition of opposite of something. Which is non-something, which is nothing.
Now, I presume you're familiar with the Kalam cosmological argument.
I'm not going to talk about the arguments for and against the Creator. I want to really know your belief or your
you not just want to have a
knowledge
conversation and
or your
talk to
concept
people.
of not
You have
having
to have cameras and
belief
push
in
narratives.
must be rooted
right
in
now,
something,
bro.
right?
No, because
So
you
I
want
want
to
to see
get out of the way
how,
so you can push a
based on
narrative.
the discussion we
If
are
you
having,
can't talk with the
if we
cameras
are something
talking,
now, can there be absolute nothingness? And we seem to be agreeing on that. There cannot be absolute nothingness. That means there has to be always something.
Okay.
If we agree on this always something, that means there is something that is always eternally in the past existing.
Okay.
Here is the problem now.
All right. Sure.
What is that something that always exists, that brought about our world transformation?
Okay.
What are the characteristics, qualities, or attributes of that something that always exists without a beginning? Because it's a necessary existence, has to exist necessarily.
Yes.
what are the qualities that made it possible for transformation to happen, and we are here.
Yeah, I mean, the God would have to be outside of time.
We're not talking about God, remember? You're assuming it's God. How come suddenly we believe in God straight away?
Well, I'm saying that I don't know, but for the sake of argument, let's say it is God. And where
We don't want to use the sake of argument. We want to infer from the best available reasons and data. So
I would
now,
say that I'm agnostic on the position.
you already now, you haven't made yourself neutral. You're saying now, initially you're an atheist, you've backtracked to now being agnostic.
No.
Agnosticism is about what? That I would never know, or there's possibility to know?
One of you guys can tell me.
I'm agnostic on the position that I don't know how the universe started. We base our beliefs on a preponderance of evidence. I don't think that we don't have enough reason to think either way on the beginning of the universe. But given other examples like the state of the world, ethics concerning God, the inaccuracy of the Bible, those are the reasons that I'm an atheist.
I can disregard the Bible too because of inaccuracies. That's not the issue. The issue is our universe.
Yeah.
If you consider this our universe, it couldn't have come from nothingness. So it has come from something. Prior to that was something eventually. So we are now going to go to a problem of infinite regress. Was there something always, or there is a point where something, and prior to that there is no other thing. That something is the first and the foremost.
Okay.
What would be, what we would say, the necessary existence? What would be the attributes of the necessary existence? Because we can look at our universe and speculate what it could be intellectually and reason. That's how we do science.
Okay.
So if that necessary thing that existed without a beginning didn't have any attributes or qualities or characteristics, then it would be like nothing. So it must have some attributes. What attributes are necessary for it to have to make any transformation? Because we are transformation. Our universe is transformation. We are expanding universe. It was less expanded before. The form that we are in now today is not the same form that was 1 million years ago, right? Or 1 billion years ago. So transformation requires certain agency with certain characteristics. So if you call that necessary existence an agent, okay, that transform, what are those necessary qualities it must possess? I can tell you, but I want to see from you, because if you don't come up with any qualities, how do you explain transformation that happened?
Well, I'd say it'd have to be pretty powerful to
Powerful,
create
good,
the
agree.
universe.
It must possess power and ability.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be outside of time. Because,
Time?
yeah,
Because time itself is a creation.
yeah, and it can't, I mean, it always would have had to bend into existence because it just can't start itself. I don't know, it probably knows. Yeah, it knows quite a bit, I reckon.
Knowledge.
Yeah, I think
So we
it's,
have power, knowledge, existence.
yeah, pretty good. Maybe
Anything else?
something else. I don't think
So I'm going to give you two other things.
All right.
See whether you agree with them.
Okay.
One is self-awareness.
Why?
If it wasn't self-aware, like my umbrella is not self-aware, it's an umbrella. Without being self-aware, can it write a letter to you?
Probably not.
No, definitely not. No, probably not, definitely not. Okay? Because something that is not self-aware cannot do anything. Okay? So if that agent, which brought about transformation on our world, wasn't self-aware, it can't make any transformation.
Okay.
So it needs to be self-aware.
Makes
And on
sense.
top of that, thank you. On top of that, it also needs to have the will, the volition, the choice. Because if it didn't will it to happen,
Nothing would happen. I see
it
you.
would happen. So now, this is our concept of God in Islam, in which God is a being that exists always, who is aware of itself, possesses ability, power, possesses knowledge, possesses will. Will the universe to come. So this is what we say is God is. You know, logically speaking, you would say you don't have any disagreement with that.
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah. So that's the step to know about the necessary being. And then after that, you might, if you want to explore it further, you will say, look, if such a being exists, wills things into existence with knowledge, power, and might, there must be a purpose for us to be here, for existence.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what could be that purpose of our existence? Could we know the purpose? Like some people say, the purpose of my existence is to be happy and to live my life, to have a cigarette, this, that. Everyone coming up with their own reasonings. that doesn't seem to be settling the issue here, because it's all coming up with people's speculation. What if that agency, the not necessary being, communicated to us and told us, that is the reason I have created you? That will be the most infallible way of becoming sure why we exist. Because when the maker tells you, when the maker tells the things that are made, the reason it's made, then you know. Rather than, you know,
this guy's the third guy who's
I would just find out.
They're going to all get baited into getting into an argument, right?
So how do we then go about
whatever? Is it right? I don't know.
finding out the communication of this creator? If you're a Christian, he will echo. That's the idea. That's how it works. If you're an atheist, he'll leave you. He'll say, okay, he'll leave you alone. If you're an atheist, he will echo. That's the Christians in the past.
It's fine.
Yeah. So how would we?
And because of that, what do you know about all be like, oh, I can see what like this. You have never talked to atheists.
What's your name?
Nathaniel.
Nathaniel, I'm Mansour.
Nice to meet you.
And Nathaniel, how would we go about and find the communication from, let's call him the creator, because we are the creation definitely for sure.
Yeah.
From our creator.
So you're saying, how do we go about in finding these messages?
How we can be sure about the communication? Because if there are signs of communication even within our own selves, in our DNA, for example.
Okay.
So clearly, the creator would also be able to communicate to
So
the
you're saying
creation.
there's signs of communication in our DNA. Can you expand upon that?
Okay. For example, when the cells start dividing in an embryo, a human embryo, for example,
Yeah.
it's from the pluripotent cells, stem cells, eventually develop certain cell lines, right? Whether it's the myeloid cell line or other cell lines. Eventually, when cells form, they become differentiated, and they seem to know the other cell. There's some kind of internal cognition between one cell to another cell. The cell that is going to form the heart, the tissue of the heart, they know where to gather within the human embryo, which point to travel to, and stick to the cells of the heart to form the tissue of the heart, and eventually form the organ called the heart. The cells of the kidney does likewise. The cells of the skin does likewise. Each cells, they migrate to their respective tissue to form the organ.
Yes.
So there's internal cognition, recognition, cognition, the ability to go together. Now, this is a code that is already programmed.
So you're saying it's sufficiently complex to call it divine.
No, I didn't say anything of that. I'm saying there is a program.
Program.
A communication, a computer program is some sort of communication. It tells you instructions, zeros and ones and what to do. Likewise, in our DNA, you know, all this instructions we have in our base pairs, these are instructions, language, a programming language to form proteins, proteins to form organs eventually. So this communication is already programmed by our creator. It is not something that is, you know, by the mass commonly believed, by chance and random mutation, by non-directed agency called evolution. It's suddenly, you know, over the millions of years by, you know, trial and error, that's what mutation is, has eventually formed this code. You know, a critical mind will reject that because the information that is already within this code is such language, it defies saying this language was developed by itself. We don't get like English language just developing from space, from no coder. Okay?
Yeah.
Imagine I speak a language and you understand the same language. You understand the same language. And this language has rules of grammar, syntax, and so on.
Yes.
You would say it just didn't pop into existence like that. Because that's the level of complexity in a language is.
So it took a long time.
You see, there is complexity at different levels. One which is like a repetitive sequence.
Yeah.
But when this repetitive sequence has meaning attached to it, it becomes language. That is the highest level of complexity. So when we see something, see, Darwinian evolutionists, they often.
I can be this guy. Yes, mate, no worries. But that's what I'm saying, mate.
Okay, I'll come with this. I can hear.
That's what happens, right?
Okay. So when we have
And he walks away because of that.
Darwinian evolutionists just talking to us about there is no design, there's an illusion of design. Do you know what we understand by design? Like, for example, I do not know the manufacturer of this umbrella because it doesn't say anywhere the company, right?
Yes.
But would I be able to sufficiently
So these
reason to
guys
say this
and
is
this
design?
guy are going to try and debate
What does it
using a 201 argument, right?
have sufficiently for me to say this umbrella is designed?
Well, like, he's
Not
gonna
knowing the designer.
Yeah, so like
I don't
this
need to
guy
know
and
the
this guy
designer
are
to know it's designed. Do you agree?
and they got the cameras in the rolling, so that when he
Right.
does something
So the designer is relevant. The design itself will tell us there's a designer behind it. So when I look at an object, what do I see or need to see? What do I check
because
for my assessment
I'm not
to
sure, I
consider
don't know,
this?
but this is what happens.
There has to be certain features. So when we examine this is an object, material object,
because no
when
one's
we observing living object, we can do the likewise. What features does it have?
These guys are talking.
This
He's pushing
demonstrates
narrative on
design.
him. And he's trying to
The winners evolutionists, they want to somehow whitewash the idea of design and say, no, there is no design. That's the problem. It's a whitewash. Yes. So now let's come back to the very
That's why
point
they
of
can't
the
debate.
creator and the creation.
Could we go on about the
I
whitewashing?
I am more interested in before the life originated in this world, there was matter. Matter interacted. Physical laws were there. Physical laws manifested into physical reality. They enforced, for example, the laws of gravity, laws of electromagnetism, all of these laws, they enforce on things, objects, existence. How does it do that? There is no biological evolution. So biological evolution is a comfort zone of atheists and agnostics, perhaps. So we want to remove this comfort zone and go one step beyond it. Say, okay, fine. Physical laws, material universe demonstrates there is a design, but there is no biological evolution in this design because there is no evolvement, there is no development from simple to the other. So how do we then explain the existence of law, physical laws, and the implementation of this law? Unless we infer there is a lawmaker or a lawgiver which implements it.
There's got to be something above those laws. They didn't just bring it.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
A highway code in a book codified cannot enforce the law in the highway, in a motorway. Because these are just some letters constructed together in an English sentence, for example, which seems to be given as a law. Do not drive on the opposite way in the motorway, for example, you get fined. These things, the book doesn't know it exists, neither does the letters and the words it know it exists. It cannot implement it. There are other human agencies or robots with artificial intelligence that we are programmed to make sure it implements it. So ultimately, physical laws are like these abstract things. They don't have self-awareness. They cannot implement things. So we are coming back to the same question about there is an agency, the creator, with ability and will, with self-awareness, with power, with knowledge, who has created this universe for a reason. And the only way we can know the reason without any doubt remaining is when the creator tells us what it is. So that's where the next step is finding out who is this creator, because there's a limit to speculation about this creator.
Certainly.
How can you, within a specific dimension or a time frame or a scope like this material universe, not outside it, understand the maker?
Makes sense, yeah.
There is a limitation of it.
Yeah.
So you can't speculate and say, oh, the maker is like X, Y, and Z, unless the maker tells you. So what the Quran tells us, what does the Quran tells us in Surah Al-Ikhlas about the maker, the qualities and attributes of the maker?
That he is eternal, he is the one.
One.
Okay,
we need to focus on that. One. Okay, he's one.
He is the eternal. There is nothing like unto him.
So no similarities, no likeness, no comparison. Is this creator something that is originated, born? Does it produce offspring?
No, it has got. It's pre-eternal. Okay. Azali, like was said in Arabic, is Azali, pre-eternal. He is not a cause, but he is rather like what Aristotle say, the necessary being.
Okay. So this concept of being, there's nothing like unto the creator.
And he's one and only. One and only.
One and only. Can there be? So now we do come across people talking about maybe there's many gods like that, many creators. Yeah?
Okay.
People who are polytheistic in nature or tritheistic in nature, like some of the Christians are, Trinitarian.
Oh, sorry, I forgot one. He beget not, and he was not, neither was he begotten.
That's what I meant. Not originated, doesn't originate others. Right. So when we see this concept, there can only be, in this understanding, one of such a necessary being. Because if there's more than one, then there will be something like it.
Okay.
And there will be conflict of will. Because this universe itself demonstrates that there's only one will in operation. Imagine two of such of this being, which exists without a beginning, and says, I want now rain. The other one says, I don't want rain. Both of them cannot.
Exactly, yes. Makes sense.
So that shows you the uniformity of will means there's only one of such a being. Okay?
Now, I hear that the Christians would say that Jesus and God have the same will. What would you say to that?
That's a belief, we know that, but that's not the belief based on the Bible.
Okay.
Because in the Bible, as we read their Bible, not mine, their Bible, Jesus says, not according to my will, but according to the will of my Father who has sent me.
Okay.
So clearly distinguishing these two wills, one subservient to the other.
Okay.
Subservient to the other. So it's not like one will saying, is according to my will, he's saying, I am subservient. I'm subordinate to the other will.
Yeah.
So that when you have two creators, one says, I will listen to you.
Yeah.
So it's not sovereign.
Okay.
So sovereignty belongs only to one.
Cool, thank you.
So that is the message of Islam. That's the Islamic concept of God. Now, in this concept of God, because this now comes back to your question, which you had a problem to accept, how can God can be good, and what's the other thing about said, powerful, and still,
Self-aware.
yeah.
Essentially, problem of evil issues.
Problem of evil.
Yes.
Yes. What about the problem of good?
Can you expand upon that?
People talk about the problem of evil, but they don't talk about the problem of good.
Yeah.
The concept of good makes people prevent doing bad things. So it's actually preventing people from doing whatever they want to do. So it's a problem. Some people want to do something, but they're being restricted. They're being somehow prevented from doing it. So it's a problem. But here, we say this is not really a problem as in an evil problem. This is something that is a problem to prevent bad actions taking place, evil action taking place. So it's actually good things. Just like if you see, for example, a police shooting someone on a criminal's foot, or on the leg, on the arm, who's just about to kill someone, is actually a good action. But the action itself looks like, oh, you're harming someone. Yeah? So we need to differentiate between what do we mean by good and what do we mean by evil. So in Islam, the good and bad can be sometimes misunderstood. Of course, God is the source of all good. He doesn't want any bad to happen. But if He gave us the ability to choose freely in a limited amount of choice, domain, the freedom of choice, then that means some people will use it and some people will abuse it. Abusing means killing, ethnic cleansing, genocide, rampage, murder, rape. That's what we will say is bad. But this happens because God granted you free will. If He stopped all of those things happening, then you have no free will. So you either have free will or you have no free will. But the fact that we have free will means God allows these kind of things to happen, but He doesn't approve of them. And that's why this constant reminder from God and a command from God, do good, avoid the evil. Don't do this, don't kill, don't rape, don't steal, don't oppress, and so on and so forth. But these things happen sometimes because of people's own choice, sometimes it's because what other people are doing on you and so on and so forth. Like, we have created the hole in the ozone layer, and that's why we're getting skin cancer. We have polluted the sea, the land, and the air, and now we're blaming God for that. No, we
Cause and effect.
So in Islam, God is just, good, but He's wise. He allows all of these things happening in this world because of His wisdom. And because His wisdom is that He wants to test you, or whether you really sincere, upright, truthful, you're a decent individual or not. Because that will determine your place in the hereafter. Because He wants you to live in the hereafter forever. But because of a free will, do you deserve to go there? Are you a person who,
see.
yeah. So that's why the test is here, and the test means there will be some loss of life, wealth, property.
ولنبلونكم بشيء من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال. سورة البقرة.
So in one of the chapters in the Quran, what says we will test you something of the loss of life, loss of wealth, loss of
أنفس, children.
Yeah. So just wrapping this up, I'll take a question. So this is why we see in this world like this. So what we say, the apparent existence of evil does not disprove the existence of God. It doesn't. In fact, some of the things that we see as evil is on the contrary. For example, pain. Some people say, why do we have pain and suffering? If we did not have pain, we would have been dead long time ago. For example, as I'm talking, imagine someone burnt my hand. It's all gone. I wouldn't even realize if there was no pain. But if there was that burning, I would retract my hand. That's what the child does. Why? Because pain is a defense mechanism to protect you from harm coming to you. So it's a good thing. So just because we see this kind of, some discomfort, it doesn't mean it's bad. Often, without the contrast of good and bad, you will not develop. You will not appreciate it. Without having day and night, you wouldn't know what day is. What do you mean day? Because you have no concept of night.
Yeah, exactly.
So the opposites are given in the Quran by our Creator, who himself calls Allah, which doesn't have any plural form, doesn't have a single dual form, and so on. Doesn't have a feminine, doesn't have a masculine. That's the name we can call upon our Creator, so that we connect with our Creator directly, right? Allah. Okay. It's not like God and goddesses and God mother, God father, God uncle, God son.
It's just Allah.
Allah. Yeah. And to Allah belongs the most of the beautiful names, he says. All the attributes that we were talking about initially, God says to us, most beautiful names, most perfect names, most perfect descriptions. Because why wouldn't it be? If a being that didn't exist with a beginning, meaning always existed, then that being is not dependent on anyone else or anything else. It's independent by itself. That means anything that it has will not be limited. So it will be all independent attributes. If it's power, there will be no limitation of power. If it's knowledge, there will be nothing to limit its knowledge. Likewise, goodness, truth, and so on and so forth. That is the Islamic concept of God. Make sense?
Makes sense. I think he had a question, though, I think.
Why can't you get free will without the worship?
My friend, Nathaniel? Nice talking to you. Do you want a copy of the Quran?
Yes, I love to.
Do you have a copy of the Quran? Can you bring one? Why can we not have free will without worshiping?
Without the worship, yeah.
Sure. Why were you created in the first place? Question.
To have free will.
No? To worship God. With your free will.
So how can I worship without free will?
Free will is what you have. Are you being forced to speak to me, or are you speaking from your free will?
I have free will.
Good.
But
So
I don't
God
need-
wants people